Doctors and nurses of Reddit who have delivered babies to mothers who clearly cheated on their husbands. What was that like? We had a very sweet blonde-haired blue-eyed mom and dad along with their entire extended family in the room for a delivery one busy afternoon at work. Think aunts, uncles, cousins, grandma and grandpa too. The baby is born and as the doctor places her on the mom's chest the first words out of her mouth are, "That's not my baby. That's not my baby." The baby in question, still attached to the umbilical cord, has beautiful dark curly black hair and dark skin. The nurse looks at her and tells her that this is definitely her baby because she's still attached to you, and she, not so quietly, tells the nurse there's no way. "I never slept with a black man. It's not mine." The father is standing there silent, not sure what to do. A long awkward silence fills the room. We clean her and baby up as cheerfully as we can. We see the extended family filter out of the room and the father leave to get a cigarette. About 10 minutes later a tall black guy walks up to our front desk asking how to get to the patient in question's room. I was assisting at a cesarean when I was a junior doctor. The woman's dark-skinned partner had been in prison 9 months or so. I took the baby immediately upon delivery and announced cheerily, "It's a boy." Her first words were, "Is it black?" Luckily the baby was a mocha color that could have gone either way. And I told her in a mildly confused manner, "It could be." Paramedic here. Had a mother give birth to a healthy baby in a home. Situational awareness had not helped me yet at this point. I asked if the father was here to cut the cord. We paramedics usually shy away from this duty because it opens us up to unwanted legal ramifications should something go wrong. There was a calm in the air after I asked the question and went on to do it myself. Come a few moments later, I was approached by another occupant of the home who informed me that this was a home for victims of sexual assault and that the father of the baby was indeed also the father of the mother and was currently incarcerated due to the aforementioned situation. It was an awkward ride to the hospital after that. Consulted a couple who were expecting a baby and were confused about how she had chlamydia again. Turns out they both had chlamydia. Both got treated and continued doing their thing. She could not get her head around how she had it again if he was the only guy she had slept with. He just looked very sheepish as I tried to subtly explain maybe he had caught it from elsewhere and passed it on. Took a long time for the penny to drop. One of those couples where you realize the kid won't get help with their science homework from their parents. So a friend of mine, he is unfortunately dead, had cancer and he was dating a girl for about 2 years. He then discovered he had cancer and that he would live at best 1 more year. His girlfriend announced to him a week later that she was pregnant. They were both white. He kept on saying that life is a joke. He was happy because he would have a baby now but sad because he would die in a year. Anyway, 9 months later the baby was born and it was black. He then disappeared 4 weeks and we learned that he had died a month later. Felt so f***ing sorry. Had 2 women give birth a few days apart on my floor. Turns out they actually had the same baby daddy. The father of the 2 newborns got both patients pregnant around the same time. It was an interesting day for the social worker. In high school my gym teacher was married to the biology teacher, who was also really good friends with my math teacher. Always saw them chatting and walking together. Well, the bio teacher got pregnant and when she brought the baby in there was an unignorable resemblance to the math teacher. Her husband ended up driving to the nearest hospital and shooting himself dead in the parking lot. Was a big scandal at our relatively small private school. One of a few actually. I know a guy who is fully white. His parents are both white and his younger sister is black. I always assumed she was adopted and one day when I mentioned it, he looked at me weirdly and was like, "No dude, that's my full blood sister." Obviously I didn't believe it. And apparently neither did his dad at the birth. But they got the paternity test and she was his daughter. Likelihood is they've got some black ancestors far enough back to be forgotten about. I also know a dude who has a white Scottish mum and a black Jamaican dad. Dude came out pale white with a ginger afro. Kind of unrelated, but this lady at my church is a white female married to a white male. They have one younger kid who is the spitting image of his dad and obviously white. Then they have an older kid that is quite visibly mixed. The kid has dark brown skin and curly African American hair and nonetheless looks nothing like the dad. So this lady claims that when she gave birth the hospital gave her baby a shot that turned him black. Therefore, we refer to this kid as Blackshot. Feel bad for the kid, but he truly believes the story and is in like 7th grade. Anesthesiologist here. C-sections are typically done under spinal anesthesia. And we're the ones at the head of the table keeping the mother calm and talking her through the procedure while the surgeons operate. I've seen it more than once. But I remember one in particular when the parents were both very Caucasian. And the baby was very much not. The actual father obviously had to be very dark-skinned. At delivery, when the not father saw the baby, he just looked down at his wife, who was starting to cry, and calmly said, "You f***ing WH Ray," and walked out. She started screaming for him to come back. But there wasn't much she could do since she was, still being operated on. She lost it to the point I eventually had to sedate her just a bit because she was in danger of injuring herself. As far as I know, her husband never came back to the hospital. I don't know what happened after that. A friend of mine tells the story of his aunt giving birth, in the 1970s or 80s, to a baby that at first glance appeared to be of Asian descent. Aunt and her husband are both Caucasian Midwesterners from long lines of the same sort. Going back to Germany, there was evidently a shocked moment. And then the aunt's father, my friend's grandfather, quipped, "Well, they say 1 in 7 babies is born Chinese." And everyone laughed. The tension broke. Long enough for the doctor, also a white Midwesterner of German stock, said that likely the kid's color is just off due to the events of the birth. That baby is now a man in his 30s or 40s. And looks like your typical Midwesterner. He just had some tinge to his skin for a few hours following the birth. Plus some dark hair at birth that has since lightened up. Bit reversed. I'm mixed from a very dark black man and a Mexican woman on the lighter side barely passing. Well, my dad and mom didn't work out, but I was made he ditched 2 weeks in and everything. She then got together with my stepdad about 2 months later, long-time friends, and he knew she was pregnant. Break the news of being pregnant to the family. Everyone is excited, but no one knows it's not the super white man's child. So cut to my birth, I come out clearly way too dark. Not charcoal, but something is missing on how. No one in that room knew but my mom, stepdad and grandparents. I'm told it was a very awkward conversation. Skin color or not, my stepdad has always claimed me as blood, knowing full well I'm not, and I couldn't have lucked out harder. No idea what the doctors thought. But I had a phone call from the wife asking for my blood type while they were in the hospital the next day, and I ducked home. I'm A. The wife is O. Bub is A+. I've done enough science to know where that's going. Have done DNA testing. I'm 100% the dad. Still not sure how to get more interesting science info about the myriad markers that apparently exist. My so and I just had our first in January. He has brown hair and I'm blonde. When she arrived, the nurse exclaimed, "Whoa. Look at that red hair." We know it's a recessive gene, but it wasn't the very first thing we expected to hear. We looked at each other for a moment and I said, in my drugged and exhausted post-labor stupor, "I swear she's yours." Little different twist, I am Ukrainian. My great-grandfather was Crimean Tatar, who are mixed Turkic and Mongolian. My wife is Ukrainian and Italian. My first boy was blonde. My second was dark-haired, dark-skinned, and has the classic almond-shaped Asiatic eyes. Mongolian spot. Despite the fact that we know my family history, we ordered a test to make sure there was no separation at birth. Stuff. C-section. Yep. That's our boy. You would never know looking at us that that boy is genetically related to us. And we love him to pieces. Edit. Not exactly cheating, but definitely an awkward situation. During my OB rotation in med school, I was caring for a patient with a very large family. The kind that all wanted to be part of the delivery process from beginning to end. They were having a baby girl. And the room was absolutely filled from wall to wall with pink presents. Bassinets. Blankets. Clothing. Embroidered quilts. You name it. Anyways. I deliver the baby and I'm horrified. Thinking there was some sort of mutation in the baby's vagina. After my initial shock, I realized it was simply a perfectly normal looking baby penis and testicles. The congrats. It's a boy. Was met with shock instead of excitement initially. But then everyone was so happy after understanding he was perfectly healthy. Apparently even with good prenatal care. You can miss the male genitalia on ultrasounds about 1% of the time. I'm of Irish descent. Extremely pale. Freckled. Wavy dark hair and darker green eyes. My husband is half Native American. Half German. Dark hair and slightly wavy as well. My daughter came out with light brown curly hair and ever so slight strawberry blonde pieces mixed throughout. Curls for days. And the nurse goes, "Wow. Where did you get that hair?" Knowing I had similar color as a baby and my mother has kinky curly hair. My husband, in a room full of nurses, goes, "I don't know, jaded. Where did she get that hair?" I could have f***ing killed him. Edit. Please no one tell my husband how much traction this story got. It'll just make him cocky and the jokes will get worse. I already have a rough time finding him hats. Super awkward for everyone involved. The husband was only in the room for a bit then left and didn't see him again. The fob, father of baby, showed up after the baby was born. I've also had where they didn't know whose baby it was, so both guys were present to see who they thought it was. Two of my cousins and one of our friends had that situation. The girl was upfront with all of them when she found out she was pregnant. She wasn't dating any of them, just being a free spirit. So, there they were. 3 dudes sitting in a waiting room waiting to find out whose life would change forever. Baby came out a spitting image of one of my cousins. To this day I'm amazed how well it all worked out. No drama. Kid has 2 loving parents even though they've never formally been together. Not an LND nurse. But my wife is and I hear everything. A woman was delivering her white ex-husband's baby with her new black boyfriend beside her, and after the baby came out and had his foot stamped with the ink pad, the boyfriend pointed to the black foot and said, "Oh, he's got my feet." My brother married a half Korean, half white woman who had 3 girls to the same Mexican guy. The first girl looks Latina. The second girl looks Pacific Islander. The third girl has platinum blonde hair and icy blue eyes. They look nothing alike. And yet if you look at their lineage it all makes sense. I don't know if this ever caused any issues between her and her ex. But I could understand if an eyebrow was raised in the third one. Now she has a 4th girl with my brother and she looks nothing like the other 3. Just standard brown hair, brown eyed white girl. I know this ain't super relevant to the question, but it always entertains me. From my friend who was a delivery nurse for years. The mother takes the doctor aside and makes him promise to let her know the color of the baby the instant he knows. The baby is born and the doctor announces to mom, "Congratulations on your beautiful, healthy white baby." The father just walked right out the room and they never found anything more out about it. Not a delivery nurse. But I have to share. My friend Sarah was pregnant and her boyfriend flaked out and was not in the picture. So, her other friend Eric and I took it upon ourselves to be there for her during the pregnancy. And she was having an ultrasound. We were both there in the room with her. As the tech is showing us the baby's face, we were saying things like, "Dude, that's totally your nose. Look, that can't be my chin," etc. Sarah was laughing and the bewildered tech was looking at the 3 of us, probably making comparisons herself. I ended up working with that tech years later. One day she said, "So, out of curiosity, who was the father?" TBH, I'm confused with some of these comments and stories. My brother is mid dark brown and I'm light brown mid depending on the season and what limb you're looking at. We both came out white as hell. My white friends literally thought we had baby photos of random white babies lying around. Not a doctor. But my best friend's brother-in-law has 2 black parents and came out completely white. DNA test confirmed they were both his parents. It just be like that sometimes. Edit. I'm only guessing they tested the mother as well to rule out any possibility of an accidental swap at the hospital. Mayo, you're savage. I'm a nurse. I have seen quite a few situations where dad turns out not to be dad. But never because of the color of the newborn. I have, however, seen an absolute FCK ton of kids who are born and don't look like the same ethnicity as their parents for days or sometimes a couple of weeks. Babies often look darker when they are born. Just saying. I had a female patient come in with abdominal pain. Pregnancy test was positive. She was with her husband who, evidently, had a vasectomy about a year prior. I slowly backed out of the room after that one. Edit. I know it's possible. I'm Chinese and my wife is white. When our daughter was born, she had a little jaundice. When the doctor told her this to let her know that the baby needed the light treatment, he said it as, "Your baby girl is a little yellow." Not understanding the situation, my wife in her post-labor state said, "Well, my husband is Chinese." Obligatory, not a doctor, nurse. But both of my parents have blonde hair. When I was born, my hair was strawberry blonde. My paternal grandparents lost their shit and accused my mom of cheating because red tinted hair didn't run in their family. However, it ran in my mom's family with a redhead popping up every now and then. My paternal grandparents didn't know that. They just really hated my mom, so looked for excuses to drag her down. It wasn't until I stopped looking like a potato, as most newborns do, and started looking like a person when my dad's family features came through enough to make them apologize to my mom. Not a cheating story. But my sister's friend was born fair-skinned with red hair and green hazel-eye colored. Both parents are dark-skinned with black hair and brown eyes. When her mom gave birth, everyone in the room went silent. However, the father knew that his wife didn't cheat. Turned out, his wife's great-great-grandmother had red hair and fair skin. However, hospital protocol made both parents get a DNA test. And everything was okay. A friend of mine, white guy, never knew who his father was, got married and had a kid with a white girl. Kid came out black. He opted for a paternity test rather than walking away, and it was indeed his son. So he took a genetics test, 23 and more, something like that, a couple years later, and as it turns out he's half African. When my baby was born, people asked me if her father was Polynesian. Nope. He's a skinny white man. There was no doubt he was the father. She was born with thick black hair. She was a big baby, 4 kg, and had jaundice, which made her look very tan. The hair fell out. The jaundice went away. She thinned out, and I now have a strawberry blonde-haired 2-year-old that looks exactly like her papa. But man, if I hadn't known he was the only man I'd slept with, I would have some serious doubts. Thanks for this. Now I have the mental image of a baby popping out. The mother looking at the baby and audibly going, "Wait a minute. I don't remember cheating." Edit. Thanks for the silver, kind stranger. Had a patient who came into ER for UT with her boyfriend of 4 months. His words. She was 19. Acting extremely dramatic for just having UT. We tell her we need urine. She urges us to cath her, which is really unusual, but she says she can't pee, so me and other nurse assume the position to put in a catheter with her lying on the gurney. At this point, nurse screams, "Call L&D." She's crowning. L&D nurse gets in just in time to grab the child as it shoots out into her hands and is a living, breathing baby. The girl swears she had no idea she was pregnant. They wheel her off to postpartum and the guy is just kind of left standing there. Dumbstruck. We only been dating 4 months. I had no idea she was pregnant. She never mentioned it at all. as he just buried his head in his knees while he was sitting on the floor against the hallway wall. I felt so bad for the guy. Okay, story from a friend of my brother's. She worked as a nurse and a woman and her husband came in. They were both white. And she delivered a child that was black. The husband immediately starts saying WTF. While she is going on and on about dormant trays and everything. He orders a DNA test. While this is going on, her mother and stepdad show up. The stepdad is black. After the testing is done, the DNA test ends up showing that the baby is the stepdad's. Her husband instantly dropped her and cut ties. Edit. In response to some comments. This didn't happen over the course of a couple of hours. Husband hung out, albeit reluctantly, until things were conclusive. Once testing showed it wasn't his baby. They tested the stepdad. Probably suspected something. I wasn't there, I don't know the deeper details. Holy shit.